Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Big story for you today. Could this be the end of the Premier League? This be the start of the Premier League? The comments are going to be really interesting on this. I think it could be scary. The Premier League clubs yesterday voted in favour for new spending rules to come in for the 25-26 season, which also could lead to something called anchoring, which may sound something like it's to do with a boat, but actually would be massive for the spending capability of many clubs, and some might say would lead to a more NFL system where clubs are on a more level playing field where the smaller clubs can compete with the bigger clubs. Now, Manchester City voted against it, Aston Villa voted against it, and my club, Manchester United, voted against it. Where do you stand on this? What is the story? So basically, the new rules are going to come in place that if you're in Europe, you can only spend 70% of your revenue, whereas if you're not in Europe, you can spend 85% of your revenue. But there is still a fear that 85% of your revenue is still not that much if you're a club that doesn't make much money, but you've got more money to spend, i.e. Newcastle's revenue is very low, but they're owned by billionaires who want to pump money into the club. So even if they can spend 85% of their revenue because they're not in Europe, their revenue is not big enough, and they've got all this money that they want to put into the club, which is what Man City did for years and years and years, and other clubs want to do it. Man City's stance is that, look, they made over £700 million in revenue last year. If 70% is what they can spend over 500 million quid legitimately every summer on transfers, agent fees, etc., because their revenue is so high. So why should they be told that they can't spend that much because they've got to spend the same as everybody else? And this is where the anchoring system comes in. So this could get voted in, and what it would basically involve is, and this is the most important bit, instead of Man United earning 600 million and being able to spend 70% of it, but Newcastle earning 300 million and only being able to spend 70% of it, there's a massive difference on what Newcastle can spend compared to Manchester United or Man City, regardless of how rich your owners are, because you're dictated to by revenue. Under this new proposed system, what they would do is, in a very simple way, is they would say that all clubs can only spend a certain amount of money based upon what the bottom club in the league earns in TV revenue. So if the bottom club in the Premier League, let's say Sheffield United, earned £100 million in TV revenue, and they said that they're going to set a limit based on 4.5 times that, well, 4.5 times 100 million is 450 million. So Sheffield United, Man City, every club in the Premier League can only spend 450 million pounds. This is brilliant for Newcastle. If 70% of their revenue under the current scheme is only 300 million, they can suddenly spend another 150 million, because 450 million is more than 300 million. So for those clubs that have got money to spend but are restricted by their club's revenue, this is brilliant if the limit is higher than what their revenue limit is. But for teams like Manchester United or Man City, whose revenue is higher than 450 million and what they can spend, they're being limited with money that they've got to spend. So that's why they will have voted against it. What do you think about this? If you're a Newcastle fan, you're going to be going, this is great. This is the way that we spend some of the Saudi Arabian money, because our revenue is going to take years to get up to the levels of a Man City and Man United. Whereas if this comes in 12 months, we can start catching up within the next 12 months by spending money that we don't have in revenue, but we can spend on this new limit. Again, I think I was surprised Aston Villa voted against it, because Aston Villa's revenue is not that high, but they are very rich. For somebody like Bournemouth, it would be really good for Bournemouth. They've got very low attendances. Their revenue is very, very low, but they have got rich owners. So if legitimately Bournemouth can only spend £150 million every summer transfer window, but they've got more than that to spend, and this new limit is 400 million, then suddenly they can spend way beyond what their revenue is. Similarly for Everton and Forest, they fell into problems because they spent more than what the limits would let them, and they got a fine and a points deduction for it. Under the new rules, they can go beyond that. So it's good for clubs that have got money that outstretches their revenue. It's bad for clubs who would have a lower limit based on what their revenue is, and that is going to be the Man Cities of this world without a doubt. So in principle, it makes the Premier League stronger. But why I think it's scary is, does it not make the Premier League a little bit like the NFL, the American Football League, where it's I know they have a draft system there, but it's meant to be about making it a more level playing field. And that's absolutely fine if the Premier League is the only league in the world. But you've got La Liga, you've got Serie A, you've got the Bundesliga. And if they see a weakness here with the way that the Premier League runs and the limits that they set, this would lead to limits on what clubs can spend. This would lead to limits on what players' wages can be. And all you've got to do is Real Madrid is go, okay, let's find a system where we can go higher than that. And you start mopping up all this talent that's in the Premier League and taking it back to another league. So yes, it could make the Premier League more competitive. Of course it could. And it could allow clubs to catch up. But it could also weaken the Premier League. It could also push unhappy clubs like Man United or Man City to a Super League and Florentino Perez. So there is a downside to it. My general thought is that this is the difficulty that the Premier League have created. We have to do something that reins in Manchester City, because under the current regime, they are making more revenue than anybody else in the Premier League. Rightly or wrongly, they are legitimately making 700 million. They're putting it on the books. It's there to be scrutinised. So 700 million pounds of revenue, 70% of that is about 500 million. That's more than anybody can spend. And they've already got the best manager, and they've already got the best players, and they've already got the best squad, and they can spend more. And they're going to keep being able to do that. So every year, Man City not only are the best team with the best manager and the best squad, they've also got more money. They're winning everywhere. They've got the biggest wage, but the biggest transfer budget, the best squad, and the best manager. Everyone else is fighting with their arms tied behind the back. So under the current system, Man City are a juggernaut, not just on the pitch, off the pitch. And people can hope about 115, but I would ignore that. Whether the 115 does anything or not, Man City are a juggernaut that is set to dominate for many, many years. Even when Pep goes, the next manager will be a good manager with the biggest wage bill and the biggest transfer budget and the best squad. So Man City are just head and shoulders. Newcastle have got money they can't spend, and everybody else's revenue doesn't match that. So something's got to be done. Otherwise, we end up in a system where Man City win 12 of the next 13 titles or something like that. But is this the way of doing it? That's the problem. Personally, I said this on the podcast, which you can check out. We'll get that link in the video description for you. It's brand new out now. They've got to let somebody into the party. Now, do you let everyone into the party? But you've got to let someone into the party. Newcastle have got the money to compete with Man City. Do you just say you can? Like, for the competitiveness of the league, do you just let some clubs do it who can afford to do it? Do you have to limit everybody to the same spending cap? I don't think you do. I think the rules just need tweaking, that you can spend money if you want to. But they've created a bit of a monster because they've tried to close the door on something when one club has had 10 years of operating under the old rules and now nobody else can do it. If you took Man City out of this league would be really good. Like, it would be really good. But they're in it legitimately, and they are super strong on and off the pitch. How do you bring that back in? Because if you don't, they're going to dominate forever. But I'm not convinced that capping everybody at 400 million or 450 million pounds is going to help us in the long term, compared to it'll be a massive opportunity for a Super League or a La Liga to get their act in gear and go, let's just go higher than them and get better players in. So I don't know whether it works, but it would be good for a lot of clubs to be able to spend beyond their revenue, because there are very wealthy clubs in the Premier League that are limited by what their club makes because they've got small grounds and small attendances and they don't get the brand deals of the big clubs. So I can see the positive. I'm here for the comments, but I have my concerns about it as well. Get yours in, smash a like on the video. Also, don't forget, Ultras Reunite. Get involved with the podcast, brand new out yesterday. Lots of people are saying this is the best podcast out there. It's a hidden gem. Well, don't let it be hidden anymore. Give it a listen, scan the QR code, or go through the link in the description and give it a listen now. It's also available on video on this channel now as well. So give it a listen. It was a fantastic one. And don't forget tonight, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Champions League watch-along. Watch-alongs for the next 3 nights as well. Take care. Speak to you all in a bit.